Daemon X Machina is a mecha action game in the style of the old Armoured core series. In it, you build and customize a giant mech known as an arsenal, and take them out into battle against AI that have become corrupted and have turned against their human masters, in a world decimated when the moon shattered and fell to Earth. You play as a mercenary known as an Outer, who is able to interface with these arsenals and takes them on missions with other mercenaries in the service of 3 megacorporations that have come to dominate the shattered Earth. Each of these missions has you either tasked with dealing with rogue AI, or with one company trying to take power from the others through various surreptitious means. The game overall feels fine. The controls are fairly complicated because your mechs fly in 3D space and have lots of weapon options that you have to cycle through. Most controls are either on the face buttons, the shoulder buttons, or the sticks, but they're not particularly intuitive, and the game does a pretty poor job of introducing them. They are fully customizable, so you can remap them to your needs, and I strongly encourage making it so that the climb and descend button are at least relatively close to one another rather than on opposite sides of the controller. It works, but it took a long time in the game's 50 missions to really feel like I was comfortable with the controls. The combat is frenetic, but not really what you would want from sort of the action mecha genre. It does feel like an Armored Core game, so fans of that series will feel right at home, but ultimately the game can feel somewhat plodding. You never feel quite as fast, even when fully upgraded, as the story enemies, who are able to warp around at top speed. Even with the warp equipped, I'm still not nearly as fast as them. The story is anime bonkers nonsense, but it's delivered in a kind of weird and disjointed way. There's a ton of characters, other Outers, who give you story through dialogue, but largely speaking, they're strange and their dialogue is rambling. The entire plot is kinda nonsensical. Without getting too much into spoiler territory, speaking about it with someone else who had played the game is really the only way I totally understand it. Combat is kinda stale after a while. So there's really only a few variations of missions. There are missions where you fight a bunch of sort of one-shot and they fall AI until other mercenaries show up, and then you have a 1-on-1 or 2-on-2 or 3-on-3 with them. Those missions can either take place outside in big open spaces or inside in these corridors and hallways, and there's just far too many of them. And then there are these relatively small number of missions where you fight giant AI known as Immortals. And they're large, hulking robots the size of buildings, or their airplanes run amok, bristling with laser cannons. And they require a lot more tactics to take down. They have weak spots that you have to expose, and as you start to rip their weak points off, they fall apart and oftentimes leave parts of their weapon systems around for you to use against them. I would gladly have traded 10 of the more normal missions for just 1 or 2 of these. There are over 50 story missions plus a couple dozen non-story missions, and honestly, they just feel really samey. That, plus the fact that your customization options start to run dry towards the back third of the game, and you really are left with a game where the plot's the only thing driving you forward, and it's just not that good. There is multiplayer. It has both online and local. I was able to play some online multiplayer with Don Koopman. It's fine, but it feels like the missions aren't tuned very well, and so a lot of them we really had no chance. We spent 25 minutes just slowly poking away at an enemy and really weren't dealing enough damage to justify the time we were spending on it. Overall, Daemon X Machina is just a little bit too repetitive. It's a little bit too nonsensical. It looks nice. It plays okay. It could use a better introduction of its controls, but really, it's just not that great a game. Fans of the Armored Core series will be happy to have something in that vein available to them, and people who really like mecha and anime nonsense will be able to enjoy the story for what it is. Ultimately, though, the game just doesn't have a ton to recommend it. It's not bad, it's not great, it's likely to be forgotten fairly quick. It's a solid 6 out of 10.